My guest today is Joe Bourne, co-founder of the startup responsible for the Hale Dreamer alarm clock. Joe, thanks for coming on the show. Would you tell us a bit about your startup?
Thanks for having me. So yeah, we're a hardware company that was started to support the kind of underserved Android accessory market, particularly on speaker docks and nightstand docks. So we released the first speaker dock for Android plug-in with a remote control, and we released the Hale Dreamer, so nightstand dock with the smart silence to a disturb feature and a working snooze bar. And we recently became Iowa USA, so there'll be lots of announcements coming up with that.
Oh, cool. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So how can a domestic hardware startup like yourselves compete with overseas commoditized hardware?
Yeah, so it's a great question. My biggest piece of advice is don't compete with commoditized hardware. Add your value on top of that commoditized hardware and then leverage that supply chain so that you're adding value and not getting too bogged down in the details of the hardware and competing with the commoditized side of the hardware, if you will.
So are you following your own advice for this device?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at this from a hardware perspective, this is largely an average commoditized speaker dock, if you will. It's got great sound and buttons and charges your phone, but the real value add, what's really unique, is in the app. So the app, has this included alarm clock app that actually silences your phone at night with smart sound, so touch of a button, and it's, all your notifications are silenced, and it can even reach back to callers and say, is this an emergency? And if they say yes, then it rings. All that stuff is in software, and so, we really did kind of, stub out a lot of the details of the hardware. Now, in this case, it's not just a sensor. The speaker quality was really important, so we had to get kind of more involved than potentially some other, an app with sensor, app wrapped in plastic might have to. But, we definitely leveraged the factory and their expertise to get this product to market, and we didn't put, huge investments on just the commoditized side of the hardware, if you will.
So tell me more about that. You said you leverage the factory's expertise. So you're not just using any old factory out there. You go for specific hardware partners, or tell me?
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, the factory, for example, that produces this supplies some, very big name tier 1 acoustic manufacturers. So, a lot of acoustic expertise, a lot of acoustic equipment that they, bring to bear on our products. And in fact, our manufacturing arrangement is much more of a partnership than, just a straight contract manufacturing sourcing. And the reason we do that is because we do get to leverage so much of that expertise and the, resources that they have, and that allows us to focus on the things where we really feel we're adding value. So the details of this app, the user experience, the design, the things that really touch consumers, and that focus is what allows us to do well at that.
So then, does that mean you actually have to pitch your product not just to investors and consumers, but to hardware partners as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of the factories that we work with are full-service factories that really are seeking high-volume, successful products. They don't make money from design fees. They don't make money just, from upfront stuff. They really make money by having successful products. And so it's our job to convince them, we have a winner with this product concept, and you should, work with us and partner and bring your resources to bear and, help us so that we'll have a successful product together and we'll all make money. And there's whole categories of factories that work that way.
Oh, really? So you've been in hardware. You have 20 years of hardware experience. How have you seen the hardware field change in that time, Joe?
It's absolutely night and day. I mean, and to the extent that my experience of a decade ago is almost irrelevant. And I'd counsel any of your viewers to be very careful who they're getting experience from, because if it's old, it's much less relevant. We have seen barriers drop from what cost us millions of dollars to bring a hardware product to market even 10 years ago to what's almost nothing today. We used to have to do all this engineering work ourselves, hardware, electrical, and today you can put together components from Arduino or Raspberry Pi, all this off-the-shelf hardware and software that allows you to assemble a product in a real fraction of the time it used to cost. And then on the sales side, you've now got all these self-service marketplaces like Amazon and eBay and so on and so forth, and crowdfunding, whereas it used to be all big brick-and-mortar national retailers. Altogether, the barriers to entry have dropped so precipitously as a result of those factors that there really is no comparison.
Really?
Yeah.
So how are you using those trends to your advantage for your startup?
Well, we certainly put together the prototype using, Arduino and off-the-shelf speakers, and that got us in front of consumers and customers much, much earlier than, we would have previously. And then we did do a crowdfunding campaign to get feedback from the market, even before the product was in production. So, we're using a lot of those tools to our advantage, just like any other startup should.
So are we looking at a piece of Arduino technology here?
It was. The original prototypes were made that way. We actually did shift to an even lower cost microprocessor because pennies do matter when you get into mass production. Another thing is that, again, working with the factory and they're leveraging your supply chain, managing your parts, it's good to have parts that they're familiar with and relationships that they have with microprocessors. Many of the silicon parts have 16-week lead times. So, if you're working with something that they're familiar with and the distribution chain they're familiar with, it's much easier to get flexibility out of it than if it's an unknown, silicon supplier, for example.
So yet another reason to pick your hardware partner with care and make them a partner rather than just a manufacturer for you.
Absolutely. I mean, their ability to apply financial resources, their ability to apply their relationships are all crucial to things. Imagine a new product with an unknown demand managing a 4-month lead time on it, virtually impossible. So your factory really can facilitate things like that if you work with them properly and choose the right partner, as you say.
So is your advice to other hardware startups to use Arduino, Raspberry Pi, that sort of ready-made technology for the prototype, and then in production move over to cheaper hardware like you did?
Absolutely, and the other piece of advice I'd give, if you can use standard interfaces. So we had a proprietary interface because we wanted a plug-in dock and the details of our implementation, but if you can use something that's cleaner like a Bluetooth Low Energy, it makes it that much easier to manage the factory at a high level. So, I don't need to know all the details of what's under the hood on my pedometer, my scale, or whatever it might be, because the interface is so well established. And that, again, allows you to give the factory the flexibility to do their thing under the hood, which helps them manage their supply chain and their inventory costs and their engineering time and all that kind of stuff.
Great. Well, very good. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your experiences with us, Joe.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We hope you found something you can use in your startup. Your input matters. Please leave your comments below. We read all of them. To learn how Google can help your startup, go to developers.google.com/startups. If you would like to be on the show, go to bit.ly/apply root access. That's it. See you next time.